And what is going on, hockey fans? And welcome to a much anticipated episode of NHL Weekly right here exclusively on the Hockey Podcast Network YouTube channel. As always, it is your host, Neil Villapiano, also the host of the Devil State of Mind podcast here on THPN as well, which covers the New Jersey Devils. And again, thank you so much for taking time out of your Monday to check this latest edition of NHL Weekly, your number one place to get all the information you need to know about what's going on around the National Hockey League. And as always, shout out to our sponsors over at DraftKings Sportsbook, the official sports betting partner of the Hockey Podcast Network. And when you sign up with DraftKings, use our promo code THPN to get $200 in risk-free bets. And there's a lot going on later on tonight. The College Football Playoff National Championship game is going on. You obviously got hockey every day, basketball. You got so many different things going on. So make sure you sign up for DraftKings and use our promo code THPN to get $200 in risk-free bets. So, we have a bunch to get to here on this episode. I know it has been a little while since the last time you saw an episode. Our most recent episode was our World Junior Championship preview, along with my good buddy Kyle Manifold. And quickly, just want to congratulate the United States for winning the gold medal after a 6-2 thrashing over host country Sweden. In the gold medal game, Sweden finishes with the silver medal, and Czechia ends up with the bronze. So they got a silver last year. This year they get a bronze. Team Canada was out, didn't even come close after losing in heartbreaking fashion to Czechia. You had some other interesting things. You had Germany beating Norway in overtime of the relegation game that knocks out Norway. Kazakhstan will be in the World Juniors next year. Next year's World Juniors will be in Ottawa, so that should be a lot of fun back in North America, and we will see who comes out on top and what teams will be there once we get to that point. But just wanted to quickly congratulate all of the medal winners for the 2024 World Junior Championships. But as you saw by the title of this episode and obviously everything else, you already know that our first topic today is talking about Wild Billy, and that is William Nylander, who earlier today, I think about or more or less maybe like 2 hours ago, officially agreed to a contract extension with the Toronto Maple Leafs. This was something that was a long time in the making. We did not know if it was actually going to get done. We didn't know if Nylander was going to end up in free agency or not. We knew he was going to get a massive pay raise, and boy, he did, as he agrees to an 8-year, $92 million contract with the Leafs that will start in the 2024-25 season. The deal, which includes a full no-movement clause for its duration, kicks in next year and will keep Nylander with the Leafs through 2032. It also marks the richest total value contract the Toronto Maple Leafs have ever offered to a player. And look, William Nylander is a tremendous player. He's having a great year this year in a contract year. And you knew that the Leafs wanted to keep Nylander, be a part of that core, obviously, with Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, John Tavares, Morgan Riley. You knew that the Leafs wanted to get this done. And you know that Nylander has been screwed over a bit over the last couple of years in terms of getting paid. And I'm sure for Brad Treliving and also the Leafs organization as a whole, I'm sure they are thrilled and relieved to finally get William Nylander signed to a contract. But it's going to be something next year. When you look at it right off the bat, the Leafs will have about 8 to 10 players on contract going into next year. And the Leafs will have officially, going into next season, have officially invested more than $40 million of cap space in just 4 players: William Nylander, Austin Matthews, Mitch Marner, and John Tavares. And so when you look at that, all 4 of those guys make up, I think, about 13% of the cap, 13% each of that cap space for Toronto. I don't know where the Leafs are getting this money or how they're able to pull this off, but it's really going to be interesting when you look at some of the other contracts and players. You know, Bertuzzi's probably going to be done. Max Domi's probably going to be gone. Maybe even Kelly Yarncrook's long contract, even though it's at 2.1, might be gone. I'm sure that most Leafs fans and people are not really thinking about it in the long term. Right now, I think I can speak for a lot of people and say this has got to be one of the last years that this core can really get it done, because eventually those contracts are really going to take their toll, not just from the players getting older, but just having less and less room to make other moves to improve this team. So you got to hope that the Leafs find a way to not only get beyond a first round series, but make a long run to winning a cup, because winning a cup in general is going to justify everything that the Leafs have done up until this point. I'm sure for William Nylander, he's ecstatic to finally get paid. Whether or not you want to say that he's worth the $11.5 million per year that he's going to be making, that's up for your debate. And let me know what you guys think in the comments section as well. I would love to interact with you guys and get your thoughts on this extension and everything that we're talking about in this episode. But yeah, this is certainly a big money deal, something that none of us really knew whether or not it was going to happen, but we knew over the last couple of days that a deal was on the verge of being completed. And so now it has been made official, with William Nylander signing an 8-year, $92 million contract extension, which will kick in next year to make him a Toronto Maple Leaf for the good part of the rest of his career. So a big task that the Leafs wanted to get done is finally done. And it will make free agency that much less interesting, because you think about guys like, Connor Hellebuck, and like Mark Scheifele, and even, like I said, William Nylander. All those guys are off the books, or off the table. So now it's kind of, I think it'll be a relatively quiet free agency period. I think if any big moves happen, you'll see them in trades. But yeah, in free agency, it's gotten a lot less interesting now that Nylander is locked down. But we'll see what other moves the Leafs are going to have to make, because there's certainly going to be moves they'll have to make, not just for this season, but moving forward. So now let's shift over to the Windy City, and the Blackhawks are certainly not going to be in any position to, make the playoffs or anything like that. This year was going to be about developing and watching Connor Bedard play. Well, now Connor Bedard is going to be out for quite some time, as because of this hit by New Jersey Devils defenseman Brendan Smith back on this past Friday night, Connor Bedard was placed on injured reserve by the Blackhawks on Saturday with a fractured jaw. I was actually at this game in person, sitting ice level, and it was a solid hit. It was not a dirty hit, in my opinion. I felt like it was a welcome to the NHL type of moment for Connor Bedard. He slowly got up, skated under his own power, sat on the bench for a minute, but then left and never returned. It started what was a fight-filled night in New Jersey. The Devils came away with the 4-2 win, but there were a bunch of fights. Brendan Smith actually got into two. The second one came from Nick Foligno later on in this game. And again, this hit by Brendan Smith obviously caused the fractured jaw. There is no timeline for Connor Bedard's return. Some people speculated it is a 4 to 6 week recovery period. So in terms of Bedard being in the All-Star game, he will not be there, although he was voted as the youngest player in the All-Star game. It'll be curious to see who ends up going for Bedard for Chicago, because now you don't have Bedard, you don't have Taylor Hall, a lot of injuries. The Blackhawks are one of the several teams that have a boatload of their main guys on IR, long-term IR, so the injuries continue to pile up for Chicago, but also for New Jersey as well, with guys like Jack Hughes, who got hurt in this game, is now hurt again. Jonas Siegenthaler broke his foot in their game against Vancouver. He's going to be out for quite some time. Dougie Hamilton's out. Tomas Nosek, Timo Meier, Andre Palat. Devils and Blackhawks are two teams that are dealing with a lot of major injuries. And kind of sticking on with injuries for the Blackhawks, forward Nick Foligno was also placed on injured reserve on Saturday with a fractured left finger. And he did not play in the third period of that game on Friday against the Devils after he got into a fight with Brendan Smith at the 5:04 mark of the second period. So Brendan Smith was able to injure not one, but two different Blackhawks in this game and put them both single-handedly on injured reserve. So crazy night in New Jersey for that one, but definitely a bad situation for the NHL and certainly the Chicago Blackhawk fans who, again, this was the main thing to watch for. But now, I guess the good news in a way, if you're thinking about the long term, is that it may give the Blackhawks a better chance to continue to lose more and put themselves in a position to potentially get themselves Macklin Celebrini in next year's draft. Although with the San Jose Sharks losing another 10 plus games in a row, it's going to be a battle between those two teams to fight for Celebrini. But Connor Bedard is going to be out for the next many, many weeks now with a fractured jaw that he sustained against the Devils back on Friday. So a big blow to the Chicago Blackhawks, and we'll see what type of effect it has on the Blackhawks the rest of the year. Now, let's shift over to the Steel City and talk about the Pittsburgh Penguins a little bit, who have kind of had an up and down year so far. I think certainly expectations were high, and it has certainly been a struggle up to this point in the very, very tough and tight Metropolitan Division. But I want to talk specifically about Jake Guentzel because he is an unrestricted free agent at season's end. He could potentially be the most sought-after player in free agency if he ends up getting there. After a 3-1 loss at home to the Buffalo Sabres this past Friday, Jake Guentzel was asked about potential negotiations regarding a contract and largely declined to comment, and he would go to say to the media, quote, I'm not going to go too much into detail about it. Said Guentzel, who is in the final year of a 5-year contract with a salary cap hit of $6 million. He also would say, quote, I'm just trying to play and we'll see what happens as we go, end quote. Now, the big reason why this came up, because you look at it, we're in the early January. Why are we talking about this? And I guess obviously when you look at William Nylander getting his contract extension and everything, I guess maybe Pittsburgh fans are wondering if a deal between Guentzel and the Penguins is going to get done, which I think personally it's going to get done at some point. But really the big reason why this came up was because the agent of Jake Guentzel, Ben Hankinson, made these comments over the weekend about his pending free agent client. He said, quote, he's on the last year of a deal. The good news is I have a really good relationship with Kyle Dubas. Jake Guentzel is in a great spot. He started his career there. It's no secret the team is getting older. There are some Hall of Fame players on that team. What's going to happen? I don't know. But I'm going to lean on conversations I've had already with Kyle, including in the summer, including conversations with Jake. I think the good thing is we'll all be on the same page. Could it get ugly? Yes, it could. Kyle has to make decisions too, which way the team is going and the investment he's going to make with Jake. That's pretty funny how that kind of went nice little play on words there. Is it in the same direction? It's going to come down to how they play and how we'll put our heads together. All the things that go into trade deadlines. Kyle might look into what he can get for Jake or what it costs to sign him. There's a lot that will happen in 2 months. I don't know the answers to that, but I do know Jake loves Pittsburgh. He's a hockey player. He's had some success and fun in that city. We'll see. So Hankinson basically is saying that for the most part, Guentzel, Hankinson, and Kyle Dubas are all fairly on the same page, but a lot of it is a matter of waiting and seeing. I think Hankinson wants to see what Kyle Dubas decides to do, and I think they'll go from there. Whether or not Guentzel gets traded away or not remains to be seen. Whether he signs a long-term deal or not, we shall see. I don't think Guentzel ends up getting traded unless the Penguins take a massive nosedive between now and the trade deadline, and there's no way that they get into the playoffs. I think Kyle Dubas, like a lot of GMs, is kind of seeing where the team continues to go over the next month. I think this next month for a lot of teams is going to really determine what you see at the trade deadline and what you don't see. In terms of Guentzel's play, I think he's had a pretty solid year in 38 games, 18 goals, 25 assists for 43 points. He is definitely on pace right now to reach 30 goals, which in a contract year, it's important for him to have as good of a year as possible, not just from a personal standpoint, but certainly helping the team. So just like Hankinson said, we got to wait and see. Let me know what you guys think. Do you think Guentzel stays in Pittsburgh? Do you think he should? And what type of contract do you think that Jake Guentzel could potentially get either with the Penguins or potentially if he goes to free agency? I think it's certainly going to be a topic of discussion as we get closer and closer to the deadline, and certainly as we get closer and closer to the end of this season. Now, I want to shift to the Central Division because we have a new top team, not only in the Western Conference, but top team in the NHL, and that is the Winnipeg Jets, which I'm sure to many people is a massive surprise because when you look at how Winnipeg went through the offseason, they traded Pierre-Luc Dubois, who, by the way, is massively struggling in LA and has as many points and has had as many success as Jason Dickinson of the Chicago Blackhawks. All you got to do is go look at those two guys' stats and you know exactly what I'm talking about. But the Winnipeg Jets got a really, really good haul for Pierre-Luc Dubois, and I think it changed the direction of what Kevin Cheveldayoff wanted to do in terms of this team moving forward. I think a lot of people expected them to trade off guys like Connor Hellebuyck, like Mark Scheifele, and just kind of rebuild. Instead, they got a really good haul that allows them to continue to compete, and compete they certainly have. Following their 6-2 win last night against the Arizona Coyotes, the Winnipeg Jets are currently 26-9-4, 56 points. They are definitely in first place in the Central Division, first overall in the Western Conference, and first overall in the National Hockey League. And that is tremendous. And you think about, Rick Bowness was out earlier this year due to unfortunate situations with his family. You look at the fact that, Blake Wheeler finally off the Jets, Pierre-Luc Dubois gets traded. You're thinking that the Jets are going to rebuild. Instead, they go on and they give new contracts to Connor Hellebuyck and Mark Scheifele, and both of them have done very well so far this year. Scheifele leads the team in points with 40, but Connor Hellebuyck, who many people saw as a guy that was going to get traded during the offseason, and if not, he would eventually get traded at the deadline or leave Winnipeg in general, even in free agency. He was going to be one of the top free agents going into the summer, this upcoming summer, has been on absolute fire. And he's coming off this past week. He was just named the NHL's third star of the week after posting a 3-0-0 record with a 1.68 goals against average and a .937 save percentage. He has been tremendous for the Jets and a big reason that they're in the position that they're in. He is 26-3 overall with a 2.27 goals against average and a .921 save percentage. So I'm sure there are several teams who were interested in trading for Hellebuyck that really wish that they had made a bigger push to try to acquire him. But the Jets are certainly happy to have him in the foxhole long term, and even Scheifele as well. It just seems like that the Jets are finally out of that frustrating period and now are in a better position to have success with the nucleus of guys that they have. Nikolai Ehlers still playing very, very well. Their defensive core, particularly offensively, has been really, really strong. This should also be mentioned that they are doing this without Kyle Connor, who was on LTIR. Kyle Connor at one point was the NHL's leader in points, and now he's on long-term IR. So that just shows you just how impressive it's been with this team, with the coaching staff. Kevin Cheveldayoff has done a tremendous job, and I'm really curious to see what the Jets decide to do at the deadline, where they are, and I'm really excited to see what they can do once they get into playoffs, because who knows, maybe this is that type of year where a team like Winnipeg really, really makes that big-time run. But right now, it is a really exciting time to be a Winnipeg Jets fan, and I'm sure they want to keep the good times rolling, but tremendous job so far over in Manitoba with this Winnipeg Jets team, who is currently the best team record and points-wise overall in the National Hockey League. And I want to stick with goalies to kind of wrap up this episode. And I want to talk about the man that they call Flower, because over the weekend, thanks in no lesser part to a phenomenal diving save that you see right here against the Blue Jackets, Marc-Andre Fleury has tied Patrick Roy for the second most wins by a goaltender in NHL history, reaching his 551st win. 7 days, or now it's been more than 7 days, after Fleury appeared in his 1,000th game, joining only three other NHL goaltenders. Fleury notched his 551st career win when Marco Rossi scored 3 minutes and 5 seconds into overtime of the Minnesota Wild's 4-3 come-from-behind victory over the Columbus Blue Jackets on Saturday night. And the big thing was this. The Wild were down with just seconds to go, and they were pulling Marc-Andre Fleury for the extra skater. Right before Fleury got to the bench, he saw that the Blue Jackets had a chance to go for the empty netter to put the game out of reach. He turned around, sprinted back to the net, and made this diving save to deny, I forgot who shot the puck, but deny the Blue Jackets of scoring. And it ended up being Marcus Johansson that tied it seconds later. He makes the save, Wild come back the other way, and they tie it up. Fleury was heading off for an extra skater, and he made that diving save with less than 2 minutes left to block what was pretty much going to be the nail in the coffin for the Wild in that one. But again, Johansson was able to score with 90 seconds to go to tie it, and then Marco Rossi in overtime completed the comeback to get Fleury to win number 5-5-1. And I think that is absolutely tremendous for Marc-Andre Fleury. What an exciting and thrilling way to get your 551st win. Again, that ties Patrick Waugh for second all-time. And if he does play, Marc-Andre Fleury will have a chance to get to 552 to become the sole owner of the second most wins in NHL history when the Wild host the Dallas Stars later on tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern. And of course, number one overall in NHL history for wins by a goaltender is Martin Brodeur, who currently sits at 692. So Fleury, if he can stay healthy for another couple of years, maybe he'll have a chance to beat a record that many people, including myself, have felt that was impossible to reach. But nonetheless, a tremendous accomplishment for a guy who was well on his way to being a Hall of Famer and certainly one of the greatest goaltenders of this generation and of NHL history. So again, congratulations to Marc-Andre Fleury for tying Patrick Waugh for the second most wins in NHL history by a goaltender at 551. And I'm sure that in the very near future and as near as later on tonight, Fleury will officially become the second winningest netminder in NHL history. And on that note, guys, that's going to do it for us today on this edition of NHL Weekly. As always, thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day to check this episode and all of the episodes of NHL Weekly. We really do appreciate it. We have episodes that come out every Monday here, giving you the latest and greatest going around the NHL and hockey world. And you can also keep the date and get notified by liking this video, subscribing, and hitting that notification bell so you get notified whenever a new episode comes out. You'll also, if you follow us here on Instagram at HockeyPodNet as well as Twitter at HockeyPodNet, you will be notified as well over there. You can also check out all of the other podcasts that we have on the network, including mine, the Devil's State of Mind podcast, which covers the New Jersey Devils. And you can also follow my personal Twitter account at the NVP Show as well. You can interact with me over there. I would love to interact with all of you. But again, thank you so much for hanging out with us today on this edition of NHL Weekly, and we will see you in the next episode next week. Everyone continue to be the awesome people that you are. Have a great week. And as always, hockey fans, make sure to rock on.